This presentation will address curriculum-based measurement, or CBM. This is a standardized way of monitoring student progress. While it is delivered in classrooms on a regular basis, it is a standardized measurement method that shares a great deal with standardized testing. CBM is a method used to monitor children's educational progress through direct assessment of their academic skills. These measures are being used increasingly in schools as a way to monitor student progress school-wide. Most teachers are now very familiar with the use of CBM measures, such as DIBELS or other such assessments connected to the response to intervention, RTI model. Curriculum-based measures can be used to measure basic skills in reading, mathematics, spelling, and written expression. It can also be used to monitor readiness skills. These CBM probes are given under standardized conditions. For example, the educator will read the same directions the same way every time that he or she gives a certain type of CBM probe. CBM probes are timed and may last from 1 to 5 minutes, depending on the skill being measured. The child's performance on a CBM probe is scored for speed or fluency and for accuracy of performance. Since CBM probes are quick to administer and simple to score, they can be given repeatedly. The results are then charted to offer the instructor a visual record of a particular child's rate of academic performance. Using CBM, an educator can quickly determine the average academic performance of a classroom. By comparing a given child's CBM performance in basic skill areas to classroom, local, or national norms, the teacher can then better judge whether that child's skills are significantly delayed in relation to those of classmates. Then this data can be shared with the families of the students. CBM probes are quick to administer. Teachers have trained children to score their own CBM probes and regularly chart their own results, reducing the educator's time involvement. There are also computer software programs available that can streamline the charting and interpreting of CBM data. Unlike many norm-referenced tests, CBM has been found to be sensitive to short-term student gains. In fact, CBM is so useful a measure of student academic progress that teachers employing it can often determine in as short a span as several weeks whether a student is making appropriate gains in school skills. Imagine, for example, that two students were given the identical reading program in a classroom. When the children were also monitored using CBM reading probes, their reading fluency can be charted over several instructional weeks to judge whether the reading program was effective. Looking at this graph, you can easily see that student A has made considerable progress in reading, whereas student B did not increase reading fluency. The difference in progress is obvious. You would want to fully investigate what is causing that difference. One aspect of the child's learning that you would want to investigate is the possibility of changing student B's instructional program to foster greater reading growth. By using CBM as a tool to track academic progress, you can judge in a shorter period whether students are learning at an optimal rate, and then change your teaching approach as necessary. CBM progress monitoring also brings other benefits. Teachers using CBM tend to be more realistic when estimating a student's rate of progress in the curriculum. A major assumption of curriculum-based measurement, or CBM, is that fluency is a measure of academic mastery. Fluency is not just for reading. Fluency can be thought of as the speed with which a student is able to produce correct answers on an academic task. In reading, for example, fluency can be defined in concrete terms such as number of words correctly read aloud in 1 minute, while in math, a fluency measure would be the number of digits correctly computed on a worksheet in 2 minutes. Within this assumption, we assume that children must acquire basic skills before they can move into more challenging curriculum demands. Those students, for example, who have not yet learned to decode words obviously are not ready to work on advanced comprehension of passages. When using CBM to measure reading fluency, the examiner sits down individually with the child and has the student read aloud for 1 minute from each of 3 separate reading passages. During the student's reading, the examiner makes notes of any decoding errors made in each passage. Then the examiner calculates the number of words correctly read in the passage. Next, the examiner compares the word totals correctly read for the 3 passages and chooses the middle or median score. This median score serves as the best indicator of a student's true reading rate in the selected reading material. Make sure all 3 passages are all nonfiction passages or all fiction passages. Nonfiction passages typically have a slower reading rate than fiction. You can administer the CBM math probes individually or to groups of students. There are 2 types of CBM math probes. Single skill worksheets contain a series of similar problems, while multiple skill worksheets contain a mix of problems requiring different math operations. Regardless of the type of math probe used, the student is given the worksheet and proceeds to complete as many items as possible within 2 to 3 minutes. Traditional approaches to scoring computational math problems usually give credit for the total number of correct answers appearing on the worksheet. Instead of using this all or nothing marking system, CBM assigns credit to each individual correct digit appearing in the solution to a math fact. By separately scoring each digit in the answer of a computation problem, you can recognize and give credit for a partial math competence. For example, this addition problem has a 2-digit answer. 12 plus 5 is 17. If a student correctly gave the answer to the problem as 17, that student would receive a score of 2 correct digits. However, in this subtraction problem, 35 minus 6 equals 21, the student placed an incorrect digit in the ones place. However, the numeral 2 that appears in the tens place is correct. So this student receives credit for a single correct digit in the subtraction problem. CBM probes that measure writing skills are simple to administer and can be scored in a variety of ways. As with math and spelling, writing probes may be given individually or to groups of students. Students are provided a lined composition sheet with a story starter sentence at the top. The students think for 1 minute about a possible story to write from the story starter, then has 3 minutes to write the story. This sample can be scored in several ways. Some scoring examples include scoring on the basis of the total number of words appearing in the composition or for the number of correctly spelled words in the writing sample. CBM, or curriculum-based measurements, are a means of tracking educational progress through direct assessment of academic skills. CBM probes are created to match curriculum objectives and are administered under timed, standardized conditions. CBM uses probes that overlap generally with the school's curriculum, are quick to administer, can be given frequently, and are quite sensitive to short-term student gains. When used to monitor an instructional strategy, CBM can give the instructor timely feedback about the effectiveness of that strategy. The measurement of fluency in basic skills is central to CBM. By assessing the fluency or speed of a child's skills, CBM first allows the teacher to see if the student has acquired the skill in question, and then gives the educator an indication of the proficiency that the child has in that targeted skill.